Welcome to our sixth of 10 webinars in our 2025 Women in Leadership Executive Speaker Series, with this one titled, A Conversation with Pat Jones on Women in Leadership. I'm Dr. Susan Madsen, founding director of the Utah Women in Leadership Project, and I'm also the Karen Haight Huntsman Endowed Professor of Leadership in the John M. Huntsman School of Business at Utah State University. I'm the host and will be interviewing Pat Jones today. This event furthers the mission of the Utah Women in Leadership Project, which is to strengthen the impact of Utah girls and women. And we strengthen Utah and its residents in three primary ways. The first, producing relevant, trustworthy, and applicable research. Second, creating and gathering valuable resources. And third, to convene trainings and events like this that inspire, ignite growth and change for all Utahns, and also just to inform as well. So I'd like to thank John M. Huntsman School of Business and USU Extension for being our sponsors today. And I'm just going to jump right in and introduce Pat. Pat and I have been friends for many years, but let me read pieces of her bio, and then we'll just jump into our conversation. Both Pat and I have seen each other recently a few times and talked about how we were looking forward to that. So I hope that wasn't just me, Pat. I think you were looking forward to it too. So.
I really am.
All right. So Pat Jones was tapped as CEO for the Women's Leadership Institute because of her background and expertise in the business and political worlds, as well as her ability to engage, collaborate, and lead. The Women's Leadership Institute was created in January 2015, 10 years, wow, through the visionary efforts of key business leaders to address Utah's deficiencies in the presence of women in top levels of corporate and political leadership. As co-founder and former president of Dan Jones and Associates, it's a successful political or public opinion and marketing research firm for 35 years. Jones helped lead and manage the company while serving on numerous community and company boards. She is an experienced and highly regarded qualitative researcher, having conducted hundreds of focus groups, actually not just in Utah, but around the country. And Pat also served in the Utah legislature, both in the Senate and the House, total for 14 years. And she was in leadership actually for 12 of those years. She served as the first female leader in either party and in either house. And she graduated magna cum laude from the University of Utah in communications. And finally, Pat currently serves on numerous state boards, including the Board of Trustees at Utah Tech University. And she received just last year an honorary doctorate from Salt Lake Community College. So Pat, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, Susan, I would do anything for you.
Oh.
When I was asked to run the Women's Leadership Institute, you were the first person I wanted to see. So I don't remember it, but we met Thanksgiving point.
Yeah, so thank you so much. I enjoyed that, and I have enjoyed watching the development of the Institute, particularly as it has really met some gaps that really needed to be filled in this really higher level, and actually all the way up, right? You have programs we'll talk about in a little bit, but I wanted you to start. Now, I've read your bio, so folks on the call know a little bit about you, and many know you already, but I wanted you to start by giving us a little more background on your career path and how you've gotten to where you are now.
Well, I've had three major careers, but I've also had some sprinkling of other jobs, if you want to call it that, including working as a medical assistant.
Oh.
I was always interested in bioscience, and I thought I'd want to go into medicine at one point. So I really loved that. I loved genetics. I took genetics in high school, which was quite rare as a sophomore. So I thought that's the direction I'd go. But, you know, little things happen along the way, and you meet people and opportunities come up. And, you know, my first major career was when my then husband, who passed away about 8 years ago, just FYI, moved from Logan, where he was a professor. We moved to Salt Lake City, and really we didn't have a for sure job. And he was going to be a consultant with a couple of gentlemen that he had known, other professors. And I had worked a little bit in research. And I said to him, let's start our own business. And
Mm.
and so I hired the attorney, I found the real estate person, the accountant, the all of those things. I carried the chairs to our new office, and not knowing if it was going to work, and it did. We worked hard. I had a 1-year-old, barely 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, and an 8-year-old at the time. And so, finding
You
child.
were proactive. I mean, you weren't just kind of hanging out to start this business. You took the lead in many respects.
No, I didn't just hang out, but my mother was a career woman, which was
Oh,
quite rare in the 50s.
yeah.
And so I've never been afraid to try new things. I'm not afraid to fail. And I have failed many times. So I worked in that. I grew. I mean, even I was doing quantitative research, and then we had a client call and say, "Hey, can you guys do focus groups? Can you do qualitative?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can do it." It was on turkeys, if you can believe it. It was for Norbeth, and it was my first focus group. So I had to kind of look up, what is a focus group? And I studied it before I did it, but I'm just never been afraid to try new things. And I think I'm really grateful to my mother who modeled that for me. And then running for the legislature, I interviewed I interviewed people all the time, and I, listened to them for a living. And I could see that there were some real gaps in how the legislature was serving people, primarily in education, funding, and things, healthcare. I could see how women were not being heard. And so I never thought I'd run for office. I was the one doing research for all of the governors, Senator Hatch, Senator Bennett, all of these. I was the researcher.
Yeah.
And so when I got a call in 2000, it was actually 1999, from Jan Graham, I'd already done
Yeah.
some focus groups for her campaign. She said, "Pat, you've got to run for office." Um, I go, "Why?" And I hadn't thought about it, but this is how long ago it was. She faxed me
Oh,
the
oh,
voting record of my representative in the
oh,
legislature. And in fact, he wasn't representing me. And so she called me every day for about 2 weeks and said, "Please run, please run, please run." So finally, just to get her off my back, and I'm serious, I said yes. And it was the best move I've ever made.
mm,
It's phenomenal. And I served 14 years, 6 years in the House, 8 years in the Senate. And I'll tell you, I always tell women, so important that we have a voice, but it's critical to have a vote.
yes.
And we can talk about
Yeah.
something that
I love
women,
that.
yeah.
I love
And then
that. And that makes sense though, with your mom trying new things, you seeing that had that thick skin a little bit already. To say I might run, I might lose, we're just gonna do it and did it. I love that.
I always had that. I'll tell you a real quick story growing up. When I was in third grade, I was a fast runner. I was a young girl that really loved athletics. I loved all of that. There were virtually no programs for girls when I grew up in the 50s.
Mm.
And so in third grade, how there'd be one boy that would pick someone to be on the baseball team during recess, and then the other boy would pick the other boys. Well, they would usually pick me. I'd be the only girl because I was a fast runner, and I loved that. So I would play at recess with, these boys, and then after school, we would ride our bikes down to the local Little League baseball park. And I remember
Oh, I love that.
so well. I remember the little boys that I played with at recess and I could compete with, but they were having games. And I remember having my hands through the chain link fence, watching these very boys that I played with and competed with during recess, but I couldn't play with, never thought I could play with
Mm.
after school. And that has stuck with me all of these years. This would have been in the late 50s, by the way.
Oh,
So when I was in high school, my senior year, a girlfriend of mine went to our principal and said, "We want to start a girls' football team." Um, and my principal said, "Well, you can do that." We wanted to play our rival, Skyline. I went to Olympus High. And he said, "You can do it. You won't have any equipment. You won't have any coaches. You'll have to wait till the boys are finished. But if you want to do it, hey, go ahead." Well, we did. And we played tackle and had a couple of broken bones. Uh, and, and I think I've always had this desire for equity. And as you look back, you kind of could see signs that women need opportunity and they need confidence and they work off each other. So
I love
just
that.
my third career happened when I was turning 65, which was 10 years ago. I'll be 75 this Friday. And here's what happened was I was thinking I was retiring. We were moving, and so I was not going to run again for the Senate. And we had sold our company 2010. The new owners asked me to stay on for 5 years to help them with qualitative. So all of this was happening in the same month. And so
Oh,
I was ready to retire. That's what I thought. And I was asked by Scott Anderson with Zions Bank, one of the most amazing visionaries I've ever worked with. And he
amen.
called me and said, "Pat, we are struggling." He said, "We have our state economy is doing really well, but we're struggling in the area with how women are perceived, especially from people from out of state, because of the status of women here and the perceptions they had about the status of women." Susan, thank you, because you were a pioneer in helping bring that to their attention. And we need more women in senior level. We need more women on boards, more women in politics. We need to look at the gender wage gap. Can you fix this? And I'm like, he said, "We'll fund you for 2 years. You'll have you'll have an office in the Salt Lake Chamber, and you'll have a full-time assistant." And in 10 minutes, I had my next career. And
I
so
love it. I
10,
remember that. I remember your transition.
but Susan, you're the first person I call to say,
Oh,
why, give me some direction. I'd never run a nonprofit before.
oh,
So
I love that, and I enjoyed our conversation, and I served on the initial board for that first year, and love the direction that has been taken to really that elevate her challenge, getting companies engaged, but the developmental programs and everything. And we'll have a minute to talk about that a little bit later, but I love the three three careers. And I call raising kids honestly a career. I do. I think that, I've done research through the years about how motherhood actually gives you so many tools and so many, and I published actually in this area, and you talk about that too, that when women come and say, wait, for political office, I'm not prepared. And you say, actually, what have you done in the nonprofit, PTA, raising kids, all of those things? I've heard you talk about that as well. They
uh,
prepare you to lead. Agreed?
absolutely, I would say more so than anything I've ever done. I mean, absolutely. These are transferable skills that
Yeah.
I think women inherently have a lot of them anyway. We know that from some of the
Yeah.
neuroscience
Yeah.
out there, but we also know how women, they're ready to do things and we underestimate our value. It is just so true. And we also oftentimes don't charge for things that we should get paid for.
So true. So true. And but we have that side, and the work that I'm doing with the Boulder Way Forward, the community work, we just have to have people we can't pay everybody. So there's this interesting dilemma that we have these hearts that want to give, and that's good, right? Yet there's this other, we need to make money and we need to charge for money for specific things. But we're socialized, Pat. You know this, we're socialized as women to give and serve and be selfless. So oftentimes it's really tricky
It is.
to step up and say, well, you need to negotiate and you need to do these things. Thoughts?
Yes, absolutely true. I have a good story on that, many of them. So
Okay.
you're ready.
Well, why don't you give me one and then I'll switch us a little bit and give you my second question. We've been going with the first question for a while, but give me one story on the pay gap.
Well, I was thinking more on the confidence and just
Oh,
being willing to speak up. And, I'll make it really quick because it's a little bit longer. A lot of people have heard this story, and I tell it almost every speech I give because it's so powerful. And that is a story about Ken Garff Automotive. And you can't think of a more male-dominated industry than car dealerships, right? I mean, it's, very few women in that industry. And I got a call from their CEO, Brett Hopkins, and he said, we have 72 dealerships across the United States. And he says 20% of our whole enterprise is women. And they're usually in kind of more entry level or receptionist positions. But he says, we've got two dealerships, one in Orem, one in California, where we have 40% women, including women in sales. And guess what? They're killing it.
mm,
They're killing it. We
that's
want
nice.
other dealerships. Will you come and tell us how we can do that? And I did that based on some of Barbara Annis's work with how men and women think differently, how our brains are wired differently, how women have innate skills that we underappreciate and undervalue oftentimes. And so I did that and presented it. They loved it. I'm trying to talk through this quickly, but uh, they asked me to come back the next month to all their general managers. I did that, gave them similar. And then they asked me to present in Palm Springs in April, which I did. I Shortly after that, I got a call from their HR manager, Joe Bernard, and he sent me a picture of this little girl and him mowing the lawn. And he said, Pat, I have to tell you this story. He says, I have a 5-year-old, very precocious daughter. And she came to me a couple of months ago and said, Dad, how come you teach my older brothers to mow the lawn and not me? And he says, normally I would have said, because that's their job. You have a different job, probably indoors. And he said, but he says, I've heard you 3 times now. And I said, I'm sorry. But he said, I have learned that we need to capture the innate abilities of women. And so I went out that day and bought a lightweight lawnmower,
Oh,
and we
no.
have been mowing the lawn every Saturday morning since
Oh, I
then.
love it.
Guess what? He says, my daughter mows straighter. She avoids the sprinklers. We have been spending time together, quality time mowing the lawn every Saturday morning for the last couple of months. And guess what? It's magical.
I love
And
it.
the thing I love about that story, and I tell it a lot, probably people have already heard it, but it's important for men to know that. But it's
Yeah,
really important for women to know it. And
yeah.
here's why. Because we as women spend so much of our time worrying and serving and taking care of everybody else in our circle, our family, our kids, our parents, our neighbors, our church people, our whatever. And we seldom think about what is it that I need and want.
Mm,
And and then who do I communicate that to that can
mm,
help me get there? Those two pieces are really important for women to really look internally. What is it that I'm desiring? What is it that I want? It is not selfish to do that. You are serving others, the
mm.
very people, when you do that. And so that message is what I always tell women. And Susan, you would be the first one to say that too. I know you would say that.
I love that. And that's such an important point to make it isn't, and I've written a bunch and speak on the either or. We do have a strong either or mentality that we have to do this or this, but it's really that both and that we really we want to be moms, some of us, right? We want to do that. We want to go to baseball game, and we can run for office too, and we can do these other things, but that's a different message for some of us. I wanted to shift now, and so the Women's Leadership Institute is celebrating 10-year anniversary. So as you can think about that past decade, what are some of the things you're most proud of?
Well, when you're starting something, it's a lot harder to build something because you try things and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. So I would say that there are several things that it's not me though. It's my team, it's my board, it's the sponsors. It's really not. I am grateful because, and I know my limitations, but I'm more of a high level thinker. I'm more of a creative thinker. I am not a detailed person. I, sometimes wish I were, but I have women who work with me who are more detailed, thank goodness. But I do tend to think of things in the night. And so
Oh,
that's just my thing. I think we spend way too much time trying to fix the areas where we're not very strong in,
yeah.
instead of adding to the areas where we're really good in and make them better. I think our schools fail in that regard too.
Yeah, the whole
So,
Strengths Finder approach is really built on that. I've been a Strengths Finder coach for a lot of years that we're taught from the time we're little, when we're in elementary school, we have red marks on what's wrong, but
no,
just throw that out the window. Look at
that's
your strengths.
that's one of the messages I like to give in our programs. But I would say, to answer your question, Susan, I think, I started out with the political development series. I was just coming out of the Senate. I knew what time to have some development training because I'd done focus groups for so many years. I knew when women, it was more convenient for them. It was during the day after the kids go to school, come from 10 until 2:30, and that's a sweet spot for women. And so I wanted to have that time period. We started the political development series. We've been doing that for 10 years now. We have our graduation this coming Monday at the Capitol. We've trained about
Love it.
500 women throughout the state of Utah, nonpartisan, but we need more women in political office who are at the table championing and voting for on behalf of women's issues. And I know that women feel
We have
different
to, yeah.
because I did quantitative research polling in Utah for so many years. Women feel differently than men about education funding, education, healthcare,
Priorities. Yeah.
guns, environmental issues. Go through it. I saw this over and over that women feel this way, men feel this way. Of course, there's crossover, but we do have views.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say one of the things that I really appreciate about that program is that, and you call it development, and it's not just training. Training is great, but it's a very pointed, like, you learn about one particular thing that you can go out and do. There are elements of training in your development series, but it's a longer time. I can't remember if it's 4, 5, 6 months, so that people meet each month and they have goals and they work with their cohorts. So it's really they're developing new patterns of thinking, new skills, everything. I love that. And that so I would recommend anybody, not even if you've got a particular goal to run, sure, do that. But if you just want to learn more and be engaged more, don't you think that's
Yes.
you're maybe open to it, maybe.
Yes. And here's what I will tell you from personal experience. I had 5 campaigns and I was very fortunate to win all of them. That's not very common. And, I had a lot of help. But here's what I learned about running for office is you don't have to win. You don't have to win. here's what people look at you differently when you file for
I do.
office. You're an automatic leader. All of a sudden, they want you on a board. They come to you for advice. So you don't have to win. But here's what I've learned about running for office, even just the running part. It helps you be a better speaker. It helps you communicate with people and listen better. It helps you write better. Public speaking, of course, but critical
Speaking
thinking,
on the fly, yeah,
problem solving,
yeah.
persuasion. You go through a list of, I just think the numbers, I can't even tell you how many ways that it helps you personally when you run for office. Plus, you have this slate of anything you, in terms of the legislature, but it's also true with other political offices, you can sponsor legislation on just about any topic. So if you care deeply about things, guess what? You can be at the table. You can be champion for that and help other people see it. I just cannot tell you
At
how.
any level, though, you're talking about city council, school
Yeah,
board, yeah, county commissioner, recorder, the state legislature, governor. You're talking all levels.
women
Congress.
tend to start. Women tend to start at like the city council level. One of the reasons is because it's nonpartisan, and Utah is a very heavily Republican state. And so, some women find that uncomfortable, and to go to a nonpartisan, they're trying to change that, and I'm not agreeing with that. I'll just be honest. But anyway, I would say to women, really think about, you have to have a voice, but boy, is it critical to have a vote.
I love that. So Pat, you really honed in, you and your team, to the political development and then also the career development. And both are developing important skills, right? And there's some crossover, there's some differences. Talk a little bit about that, your passion around and the importance of, and anything else, your programs around the career development side. And that's not just for corporations, it's like workplaces, right? Workplaces, so nonprofits, for-profit, education,
Yes.
um, uh, higher ed, all of those kinds of situations are in that career part, right?
Yes. Thank you, Susan. That's absolutely true. I have to say, I learned from your research. It's like, where are the weak links and how can we make them stronger? So I thank you for your amazing,
Oh,
you know,
you're so kind. Thank you.
seriously though, you've been a pioneer. You've instigated a lot of this. So thank you.
Thank you.
What happened was, so we've been in an organization for 10 years. By the way, we consider men as allies and advocates of women. That's a secret sauce of ours, is we have half of our men, half of our board is men, and they're influential men. And it won't happen unless, in my opinion, things will not really improve until we have male advocates and allies that are
And we
vocal.
have so much work to do in that space.
Yes, we do.
But the Boulder Way Forward, we have a male allyship impact team. And they are like, we need an army. They're using an army, and I'm like, that's great. You're men, and that's kind of what we need. They are like, we need an army of men all over the state that say, this is critical, not just for my company, but I need my daughter to be able to, or my spouse or the people around that I love. So there's some work to do, and I'm so glad you've set such a good example. If you haven't noticed, Pat and I appreciate each other a lot, so we're very complimentary at each other. But
Well, it's for me on my side anyway. So,
so I'm so glad you brought that up.
well, the career development series started because I would go out to companies to explain the value of women in leadership. It's not good enough to, for people to feel, oh, I want our company to look better on paper. You have to understand the value that women bring to leadership. And so I would hear women say, well, I'm stuck in the middle. I'm in management, but I have nowhere to go. And so over and over, I heard that. And so I started the career development series, And that one is for women that have direct reports. We're in our 7th year. We just started the year and it's 8 months long. It's once a month.
Mm.
We have these cohorts where we go to a different company every month. Last week was our first one for 2025. We went to Traeger and we
I
had
love it.
yeah, and I mean, and so it exposes women from all walks of life, different industries to what's out there. It's become so popular. We have 105 women in it again this year. It's like capped
A
out.
big cohort.
But we have satellites now in St. George and Kanab. Kanab is, oh my goodness, are they ever on fire? But so they do their own cohort, but then they come in with us and get the same training. We're going to have Joseph Grenny come back. He wrote Crucial Conversations, it was New York Times bestseller. He'll be our March speaker, one of our March speakers. We have Gail Miller. We have all 3 of our female Supreme Court justices in Utah. We have a majority female Supreme Court. Yes, it's
Yeah,
true.
I love it.
And this will be their 3rd year that they've been speakers, and they are incredible. So we'll be at the federal courthouse in May. So it's very high level. It's people that are giving their time, and it's just very high quality. And of course, Susan, cohorts work because
We
especially for
do.
women,
Yeah.
it's like you get to know people from mining and construction and higher ed and healthcare and all of these different industries. You get to know each other. It's magical. Women are
I
magical.
Well, I've sent people, so many people your way for both of them because that's just something. I mean, we all take the pieces and parts, and we don't. In my work, we don't have the bandwidth at all to do, but we don't need to because you're doing that piece, and other people have pieces. I really love that, and I also appreciate that you've started a new one specifically. We need developmental opportunities no matter where women are on the pipeline, right? In college, we've got opportunities for this and that, but those rising women, and so that's a recent program, right?
Yes, we have Rising Leaders that started 4 years ago.
Oh, I
These are
guess not so recent.
these are women who don't have direct reports yet, but they're in the pipeline for leadership. And we use some of our alums from our other programs to teach
Yeah,
some of
to teach.
that has been amazing too. My staff, Nicole and Patty have been really helpful in that. This year we started another new one. So we have 4 programs. This one I titled Next Chapter. This is one I've been really on top, just wanting to do for a long time. These are for women who have been home with their kids. They tend to be in their 40s.
Mm.
My daughters are both in their 40s, and they've told me, "Hey, mom, my friends, they don't know what to do. Their kids are in school now. They want to do something meaningful. They don't know where to go. They don't know what the opportunities are." So we started Next Chapter, and that was our first class was last week.
Oh,
And
awesome.
super stoked about this. But I have to tell you, Susan, you'll appreciate this. The first class was last Monday. And we had them introduce themselves, and almost all of them were from either Davis County or Utah County, Southern Utah County. And hearing some of the stories I mean, there were tears, during the session, but just how women who stay home with their children don't feel valued. More than 2, there might have been 3 or 4 that said their husbands were in positions where they would have to go to events with them. And one woman said, I always feel like a village idiot, quote. She
Mm.
doesn't feel like she feels valued, because she doesn't have a story, she thinks.
Mm.
So this whole thing that you're talking about is the value of what you're doing at home. Of course, some women will say are very proud of it and should be, but it's a very common response that we
Yeah.
hear, women that are at home when in fact they're contributing every bit as much. more so.
Absolutely. And some of the best, when I was this full-time stay-at-home mom, I always kept, I had to, my mind is always too busy to just do one thing. But I served on some boards and did some things for the city at the same time. That really, I mean, that combination, sometimes when you are a stay-at-home mom, when your kids go to school or whatever, you have this space to do some leadership in the community, and it is leadership using your
It is.
voice and doing those things. And just a little pitch, we have lots of opportunities in every county to through a Boulder Way Forward to actually start practicing for those groups. And it's not start because you've done things in the community already or in your church groups or whatever. It's just continuing into
Yes.
a space. And speaking of that, Pat, one of your, and I've heard people say one of your superpowers, can I just call it that, um, is in building relationships. So in this series, we're talking about career development of women, and building relationships is actually, and I would not say just for the C-suite, right? It's along the way, even that group that you're talking about, that kind of returning. Talk a little bit about your feelings about building relationships and also some of your tips. Like what do you recommend in that space of building relationships?
It's all about relationships. It's all about that. And women are really good at that. They just need to figure out or feel confident about tapping into that. You know, if you're a woman who's been at home, there will be people in your neighborhood, your community, your church, or whatever it is, whatever your circle is, that might be a leader. Go to that person and say, this is what I want. Remember the lawnmower story I just told? Um, do some work on yourself and just say, what is it that I want? It's so important we think intentionally about what it is that I want. What feeling do I want in my heart? And what would get me to that point? And go make appointments with women and men who you consider to be leaders. And it's amazing. It's like a pinball machine. That person will lead to another, and that one will lead to another. But go to lunch with them, take them to lunch, go ask, because most people are very willing to spend 15 minutes with you. And it's amazing to me. I mean, you know, I don't consider myself a community leader, but I'm well connected, and people tell me that. It's like
You are a community
it's
leader.
say to, I mean, but it's because I've said yes in a lot of cases. Probably times I shouldn't have said yes, but I did. And say yes until you have to say no.
And
That's
you
what.
know what I love, real quick, I want to make a comment about that because we, in the past years, numbers of years ago, and you still see workshops about this, and I think they have their place on how to help women say no. So there's this place for that, I think. But I will tell you the most powerful things, experiences I've ever had, the most powerful opportunities is when I've said yes and
That,
just leaned in.
or sometimes you have to say no.
Yeah, you
I,
do.
yep, I know.
But let's not just get practiced saying no to everything.
uh, pick,
Yeah.
pick what's important to you and understand what your value, your mission is, what's important to you, your values, and it will be probably a little different for every woman.
Oh, thank you. So I've got a two-part question, and I've seen a couple comments, so I'm starting to bring some comments or questions. So those of you that have some targeted questions, it's a good time to put those in. But I wanted to have you first think about, as you're seeing, there's some challenges today. There's always challenges, been challenges for women. So what are some critical challenges you're seeing for women so that we can acknowledge that? And then after you talk about that, what are some, even though there's chaos going on all over around us, right? There still are opportunities, right? So if you could talk, give us a few things on the challenges that are critical for us to understand and overcome, but then some of your views on the opportunities.
Well, I think the biggest challenge for women today, and especially this culture in Utah is difficult for some women, and it's easy for others. But I'm going to title, I'm just putting together a speech. I'm giving it the Heart Go Red for Women. So I might be disclosing something I might do and I might not do, but the title is Unmute Yourself. And we, especially in our culture, are oftentimes too passive aggressive. We need to be more honest, but be respectful in that honesty. So my husband teaches this, by the way, and he really helped crystallize it for me. Joe really did. Honest respect and respectful honesty. So many times we are afraid to say something. We might hurt someone's feelings. We'll say, going back to what I said earlier, we say yes when we really don't mean yes. We need to just make it more honest in how we deal with it. So uh, check yourselves. I would say to women, check yourself on an ongoing basis that am I being honest with this? And here's a good example. I've talked to the women on the chamber board that about this. There was a woman just when I was in my old job that when I was a moderator, focus group moderator, and the new owner gave me a new hostess. And she came to work the first time. I'd never met her, but she came to hostess with my clients in the back room who were, I highly respected. And she had a skirt that was so short that it was a little embarrassing. And I had to tell her, she says, I'm here to hostess. And I go, no, you're not. Um, so you're going to have to change. This is not appropriate for now. No man would feel comfortable telling a young woman that. But we as women need to help our younger, I'm going to call them our younger sisters, to understand that when you dress inappropriately like that, you are hurting yourself. You are not going to be taken seriously. So it's not a matter of, I feel jealous about her beautiful body or anything like that. It's a matter of helping our sisters understand what will help them and how, men react to that because they'll just ignore it. And so, I mean, that's just one example where we need to start being honest, but respectful. She was not happy with me because she didn't have a car and she had to go back home, but it was not worth it to me to do that. And so I found another way out of that. But I just think we need to have more honesty like that. I don't know if that resonates with anybody, but just a thought.
Yeah. I've had a bit of a coughing attack here, so getting over it a little. So thank you. Thank
Okay.
you, Melinda, for jumping on. Melinda, why don't you just stay with us because my voice is a little weird still. But just talk for a minute about opportunities. I mean, you see good opportunities today for women, right?
Yes, there will always be opportunities for talent, and women need to understand their talent. I was in a funeral line not too long ago, and but I was listening. You can't help but when you're waiting in line, hearing people behind you. And this young woman was saying, oh, what do you want to do? You're in college. What do you want to do? I want to go into medicine. Oh, don't go into medicine now. It's a terrible time to go into medicine. Well, she goes, well, I'm thinking between that and teaching. Oh, don't go into teaching. It's not, it's a, it's a good profession, but it's a terrible time. It's like everything she brought up. It's like, it's time that we help young people understand that they can create their own opportunities. And going back to what I said about saying yes, volunteer, do what you can. You don't, I mean, there's only so much time people have, but pick the things that are really important to you and learn to, to step into things, because those things are the things that you'll meet people that will help guide you to what you really want. So the opportunities can be created for you or by you. And I would just say know that, and just figure out what you really want and then go create those opportunities.
I love that. Thank you so much. One of the questions that always comes up, Pat, and you probably get this too, especially as you were raising your children. Um, you're in politics and business and home and children and grandchildren, the whole life. So I think it goes back to that either or versus and. So I'm not a big fan of the word balance, but how do you have a few strategies on how you kind of like did it all? Let's just leave it at that.
I didn't do it all.
Oh,
I didn't,
yeah.
I'm learning now that one of my daughters said, Mom, you were not there for me. You were, you, and I had no idea. I thought I was. I had really good childcare that I paid for, but she's honest. I'm glad she is. But no, you can't look backward. All you can do is think, I did the best I knew, given the information I had and the resources I had, and quit putting yourself through a lot of shame and blame. My oldest son, when I moved to Logan, this was in 1975 or something like that. I needed childcare for him because I had to work. My husband was getting his master's up there. And so they had one childcare place, one in the whole city, and they had one spot left. And I had to take it. And it was okay, but I have never felt so guilty. I went to work in personnel. It was a full-time job, and I carried guilt from that for years. And I went back. Finally, I just mustered up enough, you know, questions to ask him. Doug, do you remember going to XYZ daycare in Logan? Yes. Was it really bad for you? No, I loved it. I had carried that guilt for decades. And, we do that as women. So, open communication. Of course, you want to spend quality time when you can. And I really did that. My kids, my younger daughter said, Mom, because you worked full time, it helped me be more independent. So sometimes it's just a mixed bag. They could be messed up anyway. If you're home and we're with them, they could easily be messed up. All right. So quit, make the best choices you can, the ones you have to, and give yourself grace that you did the best you could. Okay, I feel
I
really
love that advice. I love that advice. As someone that beat myself up for even if I was a stay-at-home mom, I was still saying I needed to be better. We have these voices, some of us and it's those perfectionistic kind of voices.
I know.
Be perfect. And they come pretty much for everybody. And not just in Utah, but this perfectionism
Yeah.
and this I'm not good enough is really around the world, that women somehow we're seeing that socialization around, and then we grow up and keep that with us oftentimes. So I love that. I want there's been some comments, one about one person acknowledged that they appreciate seeing you and I support each other. So thank you. And how women really do need to be supporting other women.
You know what, Susan, that's a question I often get, problems about women not supporting others.
Yeah.
And I've thought a lot about that because I've had men, when I do public speaking engagements, I'll almost always have a man or two afterward It's not during the session. They'll come afterward and say, I promoted this one woman, but the other women just don't like her. Things like this. And you've heard it.
Yep.
And there's been studies on it, the scarcity and all of that. Here's this is just a survey of one. This is just my thought on this. I don't think it's any more prevalent with women than it is with men. It's just,
It's so true, but we don't talk about men. We're
we
like,
do,
oh, that man's not getting along with other
no,
men. And
no,
men compete with men all the time. That's acceptable.
yep,
But women really, it's interesting. I was giving a workshop last week and I brought this up because it's a wrestle with me that women sometimes say, let's get together, let's not compete. And I understand that, and that's important in some ways, but men compete all the time and they don't. So it's an interesting, but women are socialized um, to not compete externally. Men are,
yeah,
but we're socialized to compete internally, and that's like behind each other's back, um, indirectly, not internally, indirectly. And so trying to pull, in fact, I did a workshop with university presidents, women, a while back, and they drew pictures on my flip charts of a crab pot. So the crab hanging on the top and the other crabs trying to pull. And so it is a double, I mean, it's weird dynamics because men compete with men all the time.
yeah.
So, but we do it often, we're socialized as women to do it in these indirect, mean girl around, gossiping and different things. And what I love, Pat, and maybe you've talked about this as well, I'm looking at the time, we're almost out of time, is that through the years when I've done workshops on this, and this is not my favorite thing to do workshops on, when women become aware, they're like, we don't need to be tearing other women down. Maybe I have been. Let's stop that. I'm amazed at how quickly women can say, let's support each other, even if they've had habits of undermining. So I love that in that we can do better.
Here's what I'll do as a final comment on this is male or female. If you have an issue with somebody, take them aside. Don't go in the bathroom and tell your girlfriends, oh, you should have heard what he told me or what he called me or whatever. Women tend to do that. And, you know, take the person aside and gently, honestly but respectfully say, you said this, here's how it landed on me, and I want to help you with your any other additional relationships you have so that you can learn from this. We have an oath, a secret oath that we should take where we will do that. And I think that is honest and respectful for men and women, by the way.
I think that's great advice. I've read and researched and teach feedback, and the more open, direct feedback, it's just better for everyone, your relationship. But oftentimes, speaking of women's development, oftentimes women actually don't get good direct feedback from either men or women. So that's a career development kind of thing. But
That's
as
correct.
we're looking at just the last couple of minutes, I'm thinking about what I've kind of got around the wheel on my questions. I haven't stuck to them. What have we not talked about that you often talk about when you're doing lectures or speeches, or you've talked about male allyship. We talked about that already and so forth. But what advice, I guess, would you give those of us that are listening in as we think about our careers as women and supporting other women?
Well, this will probably go off script a little bit, but I've been thinking a lot about this because in my later years in my life, there are times we have different chapters in our life, whether it's being single, divorced, widowed, happily married, unhappily married. I've been in all of those, by the way. Those all describe me. at some point in my life. But I would say what I would leave for women is, as I turn 75, is that my diamond year? I don't know. On
I don't
Friday,
know.
I don't either. But I have never been happier in my
Oh,
life than now. And I happen to have found a right person that's a perfect match for me that I never anticipated. I was, after Dan passed away, I was fine. I was taking line dancing classes. I was playing the drums. I was biking, all of these things. And I was happy. I never anticipated getting married again. But I just think my story gives a hope for people, whatever stage you're in, that you can find your own happiness and you don't have to rely on someone else for your own happiness. And if you're a happy person, you're going to find value and satisfaction in whatever you do. Is that a fair answer?
oh yeah, that is a profound concluding thought. I really like that. Whether it's and just finding happiness in the career, don't you agree? I mean, it has to be all parts of our lives. That wholeness, and sometimes we're all focused on one piece, and sometimes happiness comes. It's everybody's different from doing a bit of work in all areas in some ways.
Yes.
I love it. Well, I need to just get a conclude, but before I give my final little spiel, I need to, as a conclusion, Pat, from the bottom of my heart, I really do thank you for your contributions, for your leadership, for your presence, and the work that you've done through the last decade and decades before, right? For women in Utah and for Utah. So thank you so much to that. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you for being here. I'd like to thank our sponsors, the John M. Huntsman School of Business and USU Extension.